Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be reviewing all my Lunar Beauty products. Now, I lost my intro to this video, so I'm sitting here editing this video. I've got all the products there next to me. I have my cat sleeping next to me, and we're both just too comfortable. So I'm not going to get up and film the intro. I'm just going to do it on my iPhone here. And yeah, I'm going to be reviewing all my Lunar Beauty products. I'm going to be swatching all the palettes, talking about my opinion on every single palette that I own, and also give you a rundown of how I found each palette. And I will also be talking about the lip glosses, liquid lipsticks, lashes, brushes, blush palette, and also the contour palette, the face palette, dimension face palette, the contour and like setting powder one and all that. So yeah, I'm going to be reviewing that for you guys. I love Lunar Beauty, and I just wanted to do an in-depth review of the brand as a whole because I've actually been playing with the brand for over 3.5 years now. So I just thought it would be a good time to sit down and review the brand. So if you enjoyed this type of video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, so let me quickly run down all the palettes that I have from Lunar Beauty. I have 6 eyeshadow palettes from Lunar Beauty. I did have 2 others, and I never actually purchased the nude eyeshadow palette. It just didn't speak to me. I did have the Greek Goddess palette, but I decluttered that because that was 3 years old and that's starting to get dry. And I did have the original Life's a Drag palette, but I decluttered that once I got the facelift Life's a Drag palette. So I decluttered those 2 palettes, and I never got the nude one, but I do have all the other eyeshadow palettes. I also do have the Dimension face palette, which is like the contour and almost setting powder palette and brightening palette. So I've got that one there. Love that one. I do have his first blush palette. I don't have his second one. This is what the blush palette looks like. I do swatch all the eyeshadow palettes, and I also swatch this one. I don't swatch the Outer Dimension palette just because I just didn't think I needed to. It's just a contour and bronzer palette, and half the shades are very, very light, so you won't even be able to see that on my skin tone of my arm. So those are the light ones. You won't be able to see that against my arm under these lights. So I didn't bother swatching this palette, but I do talk about that palette. I do have a couple of lip glosses, 2 shades. I did have a whole lot more, but I finished them up and they haven't been restocked. So I do only have the 2 lip gloss shades, and I only have one liquid lipstick shade, which is the shade Aphrodite, but I have it in 2 components, which I'll talk to you about in the video. Then I also do have 1 pair of lashes in the shade Flare, and then I have all his brushes as well. When I actually talk about each of the palettes, I'm going to do a swatch of them and tell you my thoughts on the shades that I'm swatching, and tell you my thoughts of the palette itself when I'm doing swatches. So hopefully you guys don't mind me doing a voiceover when I do all the swatches of these shades. I've never done a video where I'm like holding my arm and swatching it, but hopefully it works out. If it doesn't, well, let me know in the comments. Anyway, guys, we've got a lot of eyeshadow palettes to swatch, so let's get straight into it. Alright, guys, so the first palette we're talking about is Strawberry Dream from Lunar Beauty. This actually happened to be my first palette from Lunar Beauty, and I've had this for almost 4 years. It's a beautiful palette. I love the packaging, the iridescent moon, and the clouds on the front are actually raised, so it's got a 3D effect. This is just the back of the palette, really pretty as well. It is a vegan and cruelty-free brand, so they actually do use dyes in their eyeshadow. So sometimes you get staining, but nothing crazy. I've never had anything that lasts over 12 hours. This is the palette here. It does come with 6 shimmers and 9 mattes in the palette. I'm not going to read out all the shade names. I'm just going to put them on the screen as I swatch the shades. I start with the shimmers first, and then I do the mattes just because I don't have enough room on my arm. I love this palette. I haven't used it enough lately. I mainly just used the shimmers out of this palette. The Blue Diamond shade, which was the first shimmer that you saw me swatch, is my favorite shade. It's a beautiful eyeshadow topper. But the fact that this palette is over 3.5 years old and the shimmers still swatch like that is quite amazing, because usually they dry out by now. I love this palette. It is made in the USA, $48 US. I don't know if I already said that. And yeah, I just love this palette. It's one of those ones that is really easy to blend. The formula from the mattes are really easy to work with. And the shimmers, as you can see, are still very creamy and buttery even after 3.5 years of it being in my collection. Alright guys, and now we are swatching the matte. I absolutely love the matte formula in this palette. Now I have washed off my arm. I am only using water and soap to get rid of the shimmer swatches and the matte swatches. So there is a little staining there, but nothing crazy. I normally use a coconut oil to remove my makeup, and that removes everything, all the stains and everything like that. But for this video, I didn't want any oil residue left on my arm because I am swatching 7 to 8 palettes in this video. So I just wanted to use water and soap. I love how these mattes blend out really nicely on my eyes. Even after 3.5 years, they still swatch really nicely and still blend really nicely. This palette does have a limited range of looks that you can create because it is very pinky toned. And there is a little bit of pops of blue, but nothing crazy look-wise that you can do in my opinion. The shimmers are the ones that I use the most out of this palette, and the mattes kind of just get left there. After 3.5 years, I've got a lot of other palettes with blues and pinks that I prefer to use. But this is still a really, really pretty palette. That's all the mattes swatched, and then I go in with the blue diamond shimmer on top of the matte so you can see what they look like as well. Now, I would rate this palette 7 out of 10 just because I don't reach for it as much. That is my arm completely washed off, no staining there at all. And now we're on to the next palette, which is the Moonspell Volume 1 palette. Now, this is a witch-themed palette. Beautiful, beautiful packaging. It is meant to make the palette look like a book of Charmed from the TV show Charmed. Manny loves witches, so that is what this palette is inspired by. Now, this palette has 15 shades in it. There are 7 shimmers and 8 mattes in this palette, and it retails for $48 US, and it is made in the US as well. Guys, this color story is probably one of my favorites from Lunar Beauty. I rate this palette 10 out of 10. It's so pretty. Unfortunately, it is sold out and unavailable. It was a limited edition palette, so you can't get it anymore. The first shade, Prue, is a beautiful iridescent purple pink eyeshadow topper, while the other shimmers are more full pigment and full coverage. I always apply the shimmers with my finger when I use this palette or any of the Lunar Beauty palettes shimmer formula wise, because Manny says it's best to apply with a finger. Now, I actually forget to swatch the shade Phoebe, which is a shimmer, purple shimmer. I didn't realize I missed it until the end of the matte, so I do apply it at the end of the matte swatches from this palette. Alright guys, so those are the 6 shimmers swatched, and like I said, I forgot one of them, but I swatched that at the end of the mattes. I love how the light catches the pinks and purple reflexes from the shade Prue. That is my arm completely washed off, a little bit staining, but nothing that an oil-based remover would get rid of. Even hot water would get rid of that. I was just using cold water. Now, I love purples and greens, so the fact that both of those shades are in this palette is just a bonus, and I find all the matte shades blend out really, really easily, and I love the transition shades in this palette as well. Very, very easy palette to work with, and probably, like I said, one of my favorite palettes from this brand. I would rate this palette 10 out of 10 in my opinion, and unfortunately you can't buy this palette anymore because it was a limited edition, but this would be a palette that I would buy again and again from Lunar Beauty. These mattes are just so pigmented and so pretty. Now, I do swatch the shade Phoebe at the end, which was the shimmer that I left out of, so that is the purple shimmer there. Really, really pretty. Now, I do go over the mattes with the shade Prue, just to show you what it looks like with the iridescent pink and purple shade on top. And that is my arm completely washed off as well. A little bit of staining, but nothing crazy. And then, guys, we have Moonspell Volume 2, which is another beautiful palette from Lunar Beauty. Same type of packaging as the Volume 1, but obviously it is a different color. Love that it still looks like a book. This palette is a little bit bigger than the first palette, just because this palette was actually made in China, because the US labs were getting very expensive to make palettes in. So Manny did go to China for this palette, but that did mean that he could keep the prices the same as the original palette, but include 5 extra shades. So bonus for us. Now, this color story, as soon as I saw it, I needed to have, because you know I love pinks and purples. Those are the 2 palettes side by side. You can see it's a little bit bigger, and like I said, 5 extra shades. The shimmers, like that first shade, are like an icy white shimmer, which is one of my favorites to use as an inner corner or a brow highlighter. Then we've got the shade Lunar, which is a pink foil shade, there is a little bit of fallout, but it's still really pretty. And then the other shimmers are more of like his traditional shimmer formula, not so much foil, which means less fallout. But yeah, all the shimmers are really, really pretty. And again, best to apply with your finger. This was a limited edition palette. I did go on his website and still available, but he said as soon as it's sold out, he won't be restocking this palette. So if you want to get this palette, go to the website now and get it. Use code Ali because that will save you 10% off when you check out. I love the shimmers in this palette, purples and pinks. That cranberry shade that I just swatched then is stunning, and that shade was Zelda. And then we've got the shade Grams. Now, they are very similar in colour and very, very pigmented and buttery. That was all the swatches done for the shimmers, and now we're onto the mattes. Now, the mattes blend out really nicely. I do find some of the purples can be a bit patchy. Sometimes they work for me with no patchiness, and sometimes there are patchinesses. Is that a word, patchinesses? Yeah, it is now. I just find the purples can be a hit and miss sometimes in this palette, and that's usually just because my eyelids can be crusty and dry one day, and then they can be nice and smooth and healthy the next day. So it's just mainly the eyelids that I'm working with. I can't replace them because I can't afford plastic surgery. One day maybe. So those are some of the mattes swatched. That cranberry red shade is stunning, so pretty. Now, it's really hard to swatch mattes with a finger. You're not really meant to judge matte swatches. You just apply them on your eyes and see if they work. But I am doing a swatch video, so that's what I'm doing there. That is all the mattes swatched. And I really love the black matte Marie because it actually has glitter particles throughout the swatch, or the shade, I should say. That's a close-up of my arm or swatch. I don't know if you can see the glitter particles in the black, but it's really pretty in person. And yeah, that is the shade Lunar over those mattes. I do find that the shade Lunar did take some of the matte swatches away, but still really pretty eyeshadow topper is what I'm trying to say. That is my arm washed off. I'm losing my voice, sorry guys. And now guys, we have the Eternal Eclipse palette, which is the brother version of the Strawberry Dreams palette. So same type of packaging, just a different color story. This palette is stunning, really, really pretty. It is a neutral palette with some pops of color. I love this palette. It has 15 shades in it, and it has 7 shimmers and 8 mattes in it. The middle is just a row of mattes, while the rest are a mixture of shimmers and mattes. So these shimmers are really, really pretty. The first one is a very soft, kind of iridescent gold shimmer with a champagne finish. This next shimmer is adamantium, and that is the special shimmer. He always has like one special shimmer in all his palettes. That shimmer adamantium is best to apply with a finger, but also some glitter glue because it is a little bit flaky. The rest of the shimmer formula is very, very easy to work with no fallout or no flakiness. But the adamantium shade, even Manny said in his reveal video, it's best to use with a glitter glue if you don't want any particles falling out on your eyes. I love all the shimmers. They are very pigmented, really, really pretty, and they pack a punch when you apply with your finger. Really, really pretty. And this color story is stunning. This palette is a 10 out of 10 for me. And this palette is a main in his collection. It will always be there. It's not a limited edition. This palette is made in the US, and it retails for $48 US as well. Really pretty. And then we've got a whole lot of transition matte shades in the middle row, which is really, really pretty. I love how these blend out really nicely. And I haven't used this palette enough, but I need to get back into it because watching these swatches just makes me really want to create a look using this palette. So pretty. Now, the matte black shade in this palette actually has glitter reflexes throughout it as well. So hopefully the camera will pick that up for you. I do my best to show you. I think you can see it on camera. Really, really pretty. I don't use the adamantium shade over the mattes just because it is so pigmented. You'll just cover the matte shades up. The Eternal Eclipse palette is one of my favorite palettes, and it's rated 10 out of 10 in my collection, and it is a permanent palette in his line, so you can buy that plenty of times. Now we've got the Lives of Drags facelift palette. This is version number 2 of this palette. Originally, the first palette Manny came out with was Lives of Drag, and it had 14 shades in it, had a neutral side and a colourful side. This is the updated version. It has 21 shades in it. 3 shimmers, 1 satin, and 17 mattes. It's got a neutral side and the colourful side. I tend to only stick to the colourful side just because I love colour, but the neutral side blend out really nicely. The swatches are not the best, but they actually do apply really nicely on the eyes. And I have used the neutral side a couple of times. I actually did a video where I did the colourful side and a neutral side on either eye, and I liked it. I tend to stay with the colourful side. But the mattes really blend out nicely, and that white shade is like a true white shade. It's really nice. So these are all the matte shades. The black in this palette doesn't have any glitter reflex in it. It's just a straight matte black shade. It retails for $48, and the pan sizes are smaller than his other palettes just because it does have more shades in it, but he wanted to keep it at the same price point. So a little less product, but more shades and still very pigmented and really, really easy to blend out. So that's all the matte shades swatched. No staining on the arm when I wash it off, which is great. There's my arm. Sorry about all the marks on them. And then we have the colourful side. So the yellow is a really, really pretty yellow. Blends out really nicely. The orange in this palette is probably my favourite shade because of just how pigmented it is. Like, look how pigmented that is. We have this hot pink shade. I do go over it again just because I really want to show you how pigmented and how pretty that shade is. The purple in this palette did not have any patchiness on my eye at all. Really packs down really nicely and lasts all day. We've got this like terracotta brown, which is a nice brown shade. This blue purple is really nice, and then this light blue, oh, stunning. Look how easy that's swatched. Then we have the green, which is another green stunning shade. And we have the satin blue shade. So this is a satin. It's between a matte and a shimmer. It crumbles quite a lot in the pan, and when I apply it, it's not the best. So don't tend to use that blue shade. But the other colourful shades in this palette are stunning. And now we have the shimmers. So the first 2 shimmers I swatch are more of eyeshadow toppers. So they're not really that pigmented or full coverage. They're just shades that go over an eyeshadow. The middle one is like a bronzy gold. And then the last one is a true gold. And that is very pigmented. This is the palette all swatched. I would rate this palette probably an 8 out of 10. Just because I don't reach for it as much as some of my others. And the neutral side I don't really touch, but the colourful side's pretty. That's why I'm completely stain free. Alright guys, next palette we have is the 12 Days of Lunar Holiday palette. This was released last year in October. I purchased it on launch day, and then it sat in my house for 3 months unopened. I finally opened it, and I have played with it. The mattes were very hard for me to work with. The first matte shade I swatched was like that purple shade. That was really hard to blend. It took me about 45 minutes to blend out, and it just made me not want to work with these matte shades out of this palette. The shimmers are really creamy and buttery, and they blend out and apply so nicely with a finger and a brush, but the mattes just were not something I would use again. This was a very unique holiday palette where each of the shades were in an advent calendar, and you would open a day at a time. I just opened them all at once. And you would get an individual shade where you would put it in the empty magnetic palette, and you could customize the palette, which is pretty cool. Now, there were 6 shimmers and 6 mattes in this palette. The packaging for the palette itself is stunning. Each of his palettes have a really good weight to them, so they feel really luxe and not cheap at all. This palette retailed for $50, which is a little more expensive than his other palettes. His other palettes retail for about $48 with 15 to 21 shades. This palette has 12 shades in it, and it retails for $50. So it's a little bit more expensive. I would rate this palette probably 6 out of 10 just because I'm not going to see myself using the mattes at all. The shimmers are creamy and buttery, and the palette packaging is stunning. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 just because I'm not using half of the shades again. And I do like that you can customize the shades in this palette by moving them around. So that's a pretty nice touch. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, this palette is nice if you love a neutral palette. Just for me, the mattes were really hard to blend. This green swatch is stunning. It's such a pretty color. I love that green in this palette. So yeah, I think I'll just reach for this palette when I need a nice shimmer to apply on my eyes. Yeah, it's a pretty palette. It was just probably my least favorite palette in his collection so far, just because I'm not seeing myself use those mattes again. And now we have the Moon Prism blush palette. This is his first blush palette. He does have a second one, but I never picked that one up just because I'm still using this one. This has 6 shades in it, and it is made in the US, and it retails for $35, which is a great price point for the amount of product you get. I use those 3 that I'm pointing to there. Those 2 at the end are too dark for me, and this one is Shimmer Blush, which is not my favorite formula. So I mainly just use the 3 lighter matte shades out of this palette. Really, really nice. I love that pink, but it's a little too light for me, and that's why I mix it with the other 2 shades. I usually just swirl my brush in those 3 shades. As you can see, they are used quite well. Now, this palette I've had for almost 2 years, and it has a lot of pigment and a lot of product. I'm still not even halfway through using those shades, so you get a lot of good value for money with this palette. Now, this is a Shimmer Blush Soleil. It's just too shimmery for me, and I've never really been a fan of shimmer blushes because I find they show up my texture on my skin, so that's why I don't like shimmer blushes. Really, really pretty matte blush there that I'm applying now. And the last blush is just more of a bronzer, in my opinion, on my skin tone. It's too deep. They all blend out really, really nicely, but that is just too deep for me, the last shade. That is the blush palette from Lunar Beauty. Really, really pretty. $35. And next, guys, we have the Outer Dimension face palette. I love the packaging. It's got a half moon, half sun on the front. On the back, it's very holographic. Cruelty, vegan-free as always. Got a very good weight to this palette because of the big size mirror on the front of it. Inside. And then it does come with 10 shades. So there are 5 warmer tone shades, contour and bronzers, and 5 lighter shades. I mainly use these 2 shades that I'm going to point to there, and then the white shade to brighten up under my eyes. I have used the lighter shades to set my face, but I mainly use those 3 shades. $49, great price point. And now it is gloss time. So I've got 2 glosses. They retail for $17 each US. Look at the packaging. The lid with the diamond in it. Oh, I love. And then the gloss itself is a really pretty shade. I love lip glosses with glitter reflexes throughout them. This shade I actually got in my mystery box from him last year. So it's just called Mystery. And the first one is called Celine. Those are 2 swatches there. Really comfortable formula. Really, really, really comfortable formula. Love those formulas. Then we have the liquid lips. So I've only got 2 liquid lipsticks, and they're in the same shade but different packaging. There's the floating diamond in the lid. This is the iconic shade Aphrodite, his red liquid lipsticks, and they retail for $18. Now, this is the updated version packaging-wise because he did bring this back after a couple of years of it not being on his website. I love the detail of the packaging inside the lid there. This is what the updated version looks like. It's got the diamond in it, and it retails for $18 US. Now, this is a formula that doesn't dry down completely. It does transfer when you drink from a glass or kiss somebody, but a really, really pretty shade. And now, guys, we're on to the pair of lashes that I have. Now, I got this in my Lunar Beauty mystery box last year. This is in the style Flare. Love the packaging of this box for lashes. I think they retail for about $23 US. I can't remember from the top of my head. Love the box that these come in. And you can see all the glue on the front of it. I apologize, but yeah, I use these lashes all the time. Next, guys, we have some face brushes. I'm not going to show you all the brushes I have from him, but I did get the full bundle of face and eye brushes. This brush here does retail for $18, and it's his big fluffy face brush. You can actually get the bundle with the bag for $65 for the face brush bundle, and then you got the eyeshadow brush bundle, which comes with 7 brushes and the bag for $40 US, which is great. This is also another face brush as well. Really love his brushes. And with that, guys, that is everything that I own from Lunar Beauty or swatched for you. Hopefully all the palette swatches worked out. I did zoom into my arm the best that I could, but like I said, I've never done like that type of swatching of eyeshadows on my arm off camera, so hopefully it works out, and hopefully I've done my best to talk about each of the products and tell you my reviews. Again, this is just my personal review. I've been using Lunar Beauty for the last 3.5 years, and in the 3+ years, I think that has given me enough time to try out all of these individual products and give you my fair review on them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're new. Also check out my Instagram and TikTok because I do post things on there that I don't film here on my YouTube channel. And with that, guys, stay safe and I will see you later. Bye.